Leaked messages from national defense officials are raising new questions about how the government uses encrypted apps. Experts in Colorado say state leaders are using them here too, as a way to sidestep transparency requirements.
That's the problem here, that it's so easy to skirt the open records law that way.
A multi-billion-dollar reduction in COVID-era funding for public health could impact Colorado's ability to combat future pandemics. Boulder will soon become the backdrop for the largest independent film festival in the country, beating out other picturesque locations like Cincinnati. And they lifted themselves out of homelessness. Now a group of Denver residents has a unique chance to express themselves.
I have something to say, and hopefully I can figure out a way to say it.
An art show that gives voice to the folks who often go unheard. Tonight on Next. The messaging app causing controversy for the Trump administration is also being used right here in Denver. The mayor's office uses it, but only on employees' personal cell phones since it's banned on city devices. Now they say they're turning off features like the auto-delete texts. Here's Spencer Soisher.
Sometimes you just don't want people snooping in your business. Just ask the mayor's office in Denver, which uses the auto-deleting enabled encrypted texting app Signal.
Using Signal is not illegal. It's not illegal for government officials to use it. There are circumstances in which, particularly if you have the auto-delete function on, that's what creates problems.
Attorney Steve Zansberg knows a lot about the First Amendment. He says government agencies may be drawn to Signal because it allows their messages to disappear in an untraceable way.
Problem arises when government officials use such ephemeral messaging services to discuss the conduct of public business and have them auto-delete.
Signal is the messaging app that members of the Trump administration were using when they added a journalist to a chat about attack plans. Oops. They set the text to delete in 4 weeks. Denver mayor's office employees are likely not talking about war plans. The mayor's office says their Signal messages were about the actions the Trump administration was taking and how they would impact the city. But they're not allowed to have Signal on their work phones. It's not a city-approved app. So, a spokesperson for Mayor Mike Johnston says they used to have auto-delete functions on their personal phones. Now they've told staff to get rid of the auto-delete.
Under the open records law, it does not matter whether a message concerning public business is sent or received using a personal device or a city-issued device.
Jeff Roberts is the director of the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition. He remembers when 9 News sued the city in 2023 to get text messages city employees were sending about the response to a violent hailstorm at Red Rocks.
It was the content of the messages that determined whether it was a public record or not that needed to be released when it was requested.
9 News got those public records because they existed. They weren't on Signal, and they weren't auto-deleting.
That's the problem here. It's so easy to skirt the open records law that way.
This isn't just a city thing. There's been issues with Signal at the state legislature, too. Roberts believes it's still frequently being used by lawmakers, despite a lawsuit a few years ago over legislators using Signal to violate open meetings laws.
So let's say those auto-delete features were conveniently turned on for some local officials.
Conveniently.
What happens? I mean, like, do they get in trouble or do you sue and they say, okay, that's what, they're deleted,
Well, that's part of the problem with this, the consequences. And there really aren't enough if you ask them, because if the records don't exist, you sue for records that don't exist, you don't get what you want, and those messages that they're looking for are gone.
Yeah, we filed a lot of records requests and they just come back and say, hey, we don't have records, sorry.
Right. Not there.
That's
Signal.
what it is. Spencer Soisher, appreciate it. Thank you. The agencies charged with keeping us healthy in our state are now on the chopping block for federal funding. Trump administration abruptly cut off billions of dollars of funding to state and county health departments. Now they're bracing for what programs they might have to dissolve. This week, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced that $11.4 billion of COVID-era grants would be pulled back. In a statement, HHS said the funding was wasteful in responding to a non-existent pandemic. In Colorado, that means about $200 million in federal grant money will be terminated. It was money that state and local health departments plan to use for things like COVID vaccines for low-income and elderly people, and other vulnerable populations as well, addressing health disparities in minority populations in rural communities, and disease prevention programs.
Majority of the funding that has been turned off is actually going to preparations for future pandemics, whether that's measles, whether that's another COVID variant, avian flu. The reality is that if we can't pay for this with funds promised from the federal government, it is the Jefferson County taxpayer who will foot the bill for these services that are legally mandated.
So besides health departments, the Colorado Behavioral Health Administration said they're also losing federal funding. More than $31 million meant for mental health services and substance abuse prevention programs will now be taken away. A local civil rights attorney says what happened in the Huerfano County Jail 2 years ago this week may be the most gruesome jail death that he has ever seen. We're going to show you some of what led up to it with a warning that it may be graphic. The family of Michael Birch filed a lawsuit against Huerfano County authorities this week after 69-year-old Michael Birch died in jail in 2023. Attorneys say Birch was mentally ill. They believe he was suffering from dementia. The lawsuit claims a deputy tased Birch and then tackled him into a metal bench, breaking 6 of his ribs. It goes on to allege that EMTs didn't inspect his injuries properly, and deputies and EMTs refused to take him to the hospital. So he sat in his cell for 8 days until he finally died. An autopsy revealed he had a collapsed lung and blood pooling in his chest.
I have never seen in my 20-year career a man languish and slowly die to death over 8 days as they cover up his cell and simply ignore him. This is gulag type behavior that simply should not exist anywhere, let alone in Colorado.
None of the Huerfano County authorities that we contacted today would comment on the pending litigation. The lawsuit names the county, the sheriff's office, and the hospital system that employed the EMTs, as well as the private organization that provided healthcare services to the jail. Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named Laura Lee, who's confused by changing guidance from the Social Security Administration. She wants to know whether she and other seniors will be required to make in-person appointments in order to keep receiving Social Security checks. Are changing fast. Yesterday, the Social Security Administration backtracked on a plan that prohibited beneficiaries from processing their claims over the phone. Those changes were supposed to go into effect at the end of the month, but now the administration is issuing some exceptions. Beneficiaries who rely on disability insurance, Medicaid, and supplemental security can still complete their claims over the phone. Other applicants will have to verify their identities in an online portal or in person starting on April 14th. So depending on where you live, that could be tricky, though, because 47 field offices across the U.S., including one right here in Grand Junction, are slated for closure per the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk. We want to remind you, send us your next question, anything about Colorado that you've been wondering about, because I bet you that someone else is wondering that too. We welcome written video questions as well. You can email them to next@9news.com or text NEXT at 303-871-1491. We do a lot of stories on the news about people who've passed away, but this might be the first time that we ever get to share that someone has come back to life, at least in the eyes of the government. Tom Kind was declared dead by Social Security. The 90-year-old veteran living in an assisted living facility in Denver lost access to his health care, benefits, and even his bank account. We shared his story with you last week. His family told us today that after that story aired, he was able to get an appointment with Social Security, and they realized that he is indeed very much alive. Tom Kind is now undead. Welcome back, Tom. We hope you're here with us for a lot longer. Just ahead, Colorado libraries and museums are on edge as the Trump administration threatens to cut off their funding as well. And after nearly half a century in Utah, the Sundance Film Festival is coming to Boulder, getting state leaders excited for all the money it might bring in.
And like our lives, we rebuilt something together.
And residents in a transitional housing community get a fresh start and a literal blank canvas to share their stories. Next. Libraries and museums across the state are sitting in limbo right now in anticipation of drastic cuts that the federal government might be making. President Trump is targeting the federal agency that funds the services, calling it unnecessary. Librarians in Colorado are worried.
We're all kind of in this hurry up and wait pattern here.
This month, President Trump signed an executive order cutting down the Institute for Museum and Library Services to only its statutory functions, putting funding for institutions across the country at risk. Librarians like Tim Miller from the Rampart Library District told us the biggest threat is to small and rural libraries, which provide essential services for their communities.
We might not be able to buy as many books. We might not be able to fund essential programs like growing readers together and things like that.
If the IMLS stops funding state libraries, the director of the Nederland Community Library District estimates it could lose up to 20% of its funding.
You know, we really are designed to support our most marginalized members in many ways. And I think I'm scared that that would go first.
Colorado got $3.2 million from the IMLS in 2023. About half of that went towards supporting public libraries. The agency also gives out millions of dollars in grant funds to places like the Denver Art Museum, which benefited from that as recently as 2024. Christoph Heinrich, director of the Denver Art Museum, says IMLS funding keeps the arts accessible.
What we're dealing with are treasures, and our duty is to preserve it, to conserve it, to make sure that future generations as well enjoy it.
Advocates for the arts worry that without federal funding, these institutions will be in jeopardy.
But if those funds were to be really cut, that would decimate our profession. It would definitely decimate our small and rural libraries.
It's still unclear how much funding will be affected by this order. The act that created the IMLS is up for reauthorization by Congress in September, which will then determine the future of the agency. Well, Colorado just got about $1 billion richer. At least that's what Governor Jared Polis is hoping for. Today, the Sundance Film Festival announced that they'll be relocating to Boulder in 2027. The governor projects the festival to have a $2 billion economic impact in Colorado over the next 10 years. Of course, those stats are always up for interpretation, so we'll see. Sundance organizers say the festival outgrew Park City, Utah, the festival's home for the last 40 years, say Boulder is the perfect place for building community. Governor Polis says he wants the festival to benefit not just Boulder, but the surrounding cities too.
When the Sundance Film Festival was evaluating the proposals, they looked at, for instance, room capacity, not just in Boulder, but they looked in Westminster, in Denver, in Longmont, the entire area, as well as some of the plans for transit and how to get people to the festival, and really making sure that this could be a statewide proposal.
Colorado lawmakers are considering $34 million in tax incentives for Sundance over the next decade. That bill has already passed the House and is sailing through the Senate as well. Moving out of the weather, Kathy, it was a beautiful day out there, but it was kind of cloudy. Did we hit that record temperature that we'd been talking about?
Not yet. I've seen 76. The record was 78. But it's interesting because areas all around us were in the 80s today. So a mix of clouds and sunshine, but still a very warm day, a very dry day. Temperatures now, again, that high 76 in Denver, but 81 in Greeley, Fort Collins, almost 90 in Lamar today. And current temperatures still in the 70s out there. So in spite of the cloud cover, pretty nice. Wind's been picking up out of the west and southwest. First wave will come in tomorrow, little mountain snow. Denver's mild and dry. Stronger system rolls in here on Saturday into Sunday. That one may have a rain-snow mix. Hey, a few showers on the radar in southern Colorado. We'll take that. There's high fire danger concerns along the southern foothills and mountains and I-25 corridor from Pueblo down to Trinidad. Only isolated showers expected tonight. We'll go mostly cloudy tomorrow. Rain holds off to Denver until later in the day. We're going to have periods of showers off and on through Saturday, and Saturday morning through about midday, there could be heavy showers, but you'll get a break Saturday afternoon for some of your outdoor activities before the second wave comes in Saturday night. That one might have some cold air support with it for snow. Temperatures comfortable over the next few hours. Again, we have a warm day Friday, rain Saturday, possibly mixing with snow Sunday, clearing Monday, tracking the next storm and chance of showers for early April. Hello, April, Mark.
Thank you, Kathy. Formerly homeless adults in Denver say their lives have been completely torn apart and built up again. Now they're making art to reflect that. Next. There's a new exhibit at the Understudy Art Gallery in the Colorado Convention Center. Opened today and features the work of 18 formerly homeless residents now in transitional housing. They partnered with an artist who helped them put their feelings on canvas and then tear it all apart.
I have something to say, and hopefully I can figure out a way to say it.
This was the painting before they cut it up. My name is Emma Balder. I'm an artist here in Denver. So it's made out of these reconstructed canvas pieces. This exhibit is a collaboration between myself and St. Francis Apartments residents who are formerly unhoused.
I was 3 years homeless here on the streets.
And like our lives, we rebuilt something together.
So it is a boulder-like structure. It is a reconstructed painting. The residents created this abstract painting with acrylic paint on canvas and then cut it up, rearranged the pieces, and glued them around this wire and wood structure that I had created.
You know, just paint. Just go ahead and have a good time.
It was enlightening.
The boulder is representative of the barriers that they are facing and will continue to face, but it also represents their strength and their grit and their resilience.
What did you as an individual see in the art project?
Whatever they see, just let it be known that's our emotions, what you're looking at. That's what we put on there.
I had no way of expressing myself. And the art project was the trigger to make all that happen.
That I am a very proud man. Man, it's been a long time since I felt this level of pride. That's what I learned about myself.
That is really my hope, that they feel proud when they walk in here and see this.
The power of expressing those emotions. Thanks to photojournalist Corky Scholl for that. We're back with your feedback next. The most Colorado thing that we saw today is a March Madness bracket for fans of Colorado produce.
Hi, this is Allison O'Connor, the 2024 Veggie Madness champion. How can I help you?
Yeah, it's not March Madness, it's Veggie Madness. Allison O'Connor is the horticulture specialist for the CSU Extension in Larimer County and also CSU's back-to-back Veggie Madness champion. Each year, CSU staffers across the state rep their favorite local produce, sharing educational resources in exchange for votes. Allison's won twice, repping snap peas last year and winter squash this year. Both times she won over potatoes, which was repped by Routt County's Todd Hagenbu. Both say that beyond the friendly competition, it's a way to showcase Colorado's ag industry.
I would hope that people would thank our farmer rancher this week and every week for providing them safe food that is abundant in supply in the United States.
If this is your first year gardening or your 50th year gardening, we can provide you information, and Todd and I would be happy to share tips and tricks for growing both potatoes and winter squash, regardless of where you live.
Bad news for fans of horseradish. We're out of time for feedback. See you next time. Good night.